on May 1st. Welcome May, everybody. And we are having a special Board of Finance meeting with, other than the minutes being adopted in the consent agenda, we have just one item, which is one we started a conversation of last week and decided to have a special meeting again, the creation of a new position, the Assistant Director of CAPE. So I would welcome a motion to adopt the agenda. So moved. Thank you, President Paul. Second by Councilor McGee. Any discussion of the agenda? Seeing none, we will go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And we have an agenda. We do have a public forum, and there's no one in the room, it appears, that wishes to speak to the board. If you do have, I'm looking online to see if anyone wants to raise their hand to address the board. And I'm not seeing any hands, so I am going to close the public forum. And we now are at the consent agenda, and I would welcome a motion to adopt the consent agenda. So moved. Thank you, Councilor McGee. Second by Councilor Barlow. Discussion. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and that brings us to really our only item of business, which is the creation of a new position. Welcome back, Chief Murad. I think one significant thing that has happened since we last met and discussed this is that the police commission did discuss this matter. President Paul attended the police commission meeting and engaged them, and my understanding is that well, maybe I was not there. Karen, would you like to report anything? Sorry, President Paul, would you like to report anything about that meeting that we should know?
Only that there were a couple of questions that particularly Commissioner Comerford had, and Lacey was also there, Lacey Smith, who spoke much more specifically to the on the groundwork that they're doing. I did not speak to that, and we sort of agreed that if they had any further comments or questions or suggestions, that by Thursday morning that they would have them to the administration, which actually Commissioner Ciclino, the chair, did let me know that they were fine with they were fine with the job description as it was. And there was discussion about, I know it was actually Councilor Grant who brought this up, and a number of councilors who had suggested that we work on the name, the title, which has now been changed to get away from the word alternative. So I think there was support for that as well. Would that be your assumption? Yeah.
Great. Jordan, is there anything else you want to report to the committee about the engagement? Okay. So, Chief, anything else you want to add at this point? I mean, you gave a discussion of the presentation on this last week.
No, sir. Happy to take any questions that may remain, but we did change the title, and that was both Councilor Carpenter and I think Councilor Grant. It did come up at the police commission meeting as well, so that was addressed. I'm hopeful done in a way that was effective and respectful to those concerns. So that's really the primary difference between what we had last week and what we have this week.
Great. So with that, I think the floor is open for further discussion from the board. President Paul.
So when I said when I spoke to the police commission, I also there was a discussion that the key discussion and what Commissioner Comerford had asked was that she's concerned about the fact that this area of CAPE is very care-based. It is, that was one of the compelling reasons to go with an agency like the Howard Center when it came to the cahoots model. And that she had concerns about the culture not being different than it was through BPD. And Lacey spoke to that. She said that, she encouraged any member of the police commission to come down to talk with the people that work at Cape and without her there, and to find out what their impressions from employees who do this work, what their impressions were of the culture that was there. But I do think that is, a valid concern, given the fact that, we're trying to do many approaches to and many responses to public safety issues. I hope that there will be some broad consensus about the idea that perhaps, while it may not happen today, that at some point there might be a discussion of how to address that in a meaningful way that shows even through geography that these are two separate areas of public safety. And to some degree, maybe in the same way that fire department isn't with the police department. I know that may not be the same analogy, but because they don't do the same kind of work and they aren't together. So I think I'm supportive of this because I think we need to move on, and we need to respect the growth of what we've created and have oversight and management to collectively move that vision forward. But I do think on a longer term basis that it would be helpful to have that conversation. That's all.
Okay, thank you, President Paul. Yes, McGee.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this tonight. Largely for the reasons that was laid out. I think, for me, this comes down to how we're having these conversations, when they're taking place, and when folks are being brought into the room before a decision is made. To me, this feels an awful lot like the police commission or the finance are being treated as a rubber stamp more than collaborative partners in determining what the future of community safety looks like in Burlington. And I don't feel like we're in a position right now where we've done all the due diligence that we can to know for sure that this is the correct place for this position, that more work could have been done to look into standing up a new department for the non-police responses that we have invested a lot of resources into over the last couple of years, and we're going to continue to invest resources in. And I don't want to make this conversation about the crisis response team, but I think because the crisis response team will be under this new position, I think it is important to note that when we released the RFP for this program, the intention has always been, as is with Cahoots, that it would be a program that is as far removed from the police department as is possible. So the idea that we're going to be doing this in-house and it will be within the police department gives me great concern. I am supportive of us doing this as quickly as we possibly can, as I've said many times over. And I am supportive of the civilians currently in the police department being overseen by a civilian. I think that is important as well. But I can't support this item tonight because I don't feel like enough conversation happened to avoid us getting to this point. So while I am overall supportive of all of the work that we're doing to continue to invest in our police responses, to continue to look at public safety transformation, I just don't think that this is the best way for us to go about it, so. I'll have more to say at the full council meeting, but just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McGee. I guess I'll share a few of my thoughts at this point. And then we'll go back to the board for more discussion. So I guess first of all, I want to be clear that from my perspective, the police department has embraced and is implementing these new resources that we've already created well. And I don't think I have heard I've heard no feedback from counselors, commission, or the public that the CSL program is not been a very positive addition to the city's services and capacity. And that has been happening in a structure with that new program being housed at the police department, led by a police department employee, reporting up through the structure. And if I'm, if that's not the shared understanding of this table, I'd be interested in hearing that. But that's my sense of it. I don't agree with the characterization that it certainly wasn't at all my feeling that we had put out the RFP, the idea of making the program, as I think, I don't want to misquote you, Councilor Ricky, but as far removed from the police department as possible. To the contrary, I think we explicitly decided that after reviewing all of the options, discussing in various public bodies, with the police commission, with the public safety committee, informal conversations, we decided with the advocates. I remember with the leading advocates on this, there was a discussion that having it housed, having the crisis response team RFP issued and managed by the police department was the option that made most sense and was consistent with the kind of drumbeat of public input that we had received, that we wanted something like Cahoots. Well, Cahoots has always been a program managed by the police department that works very closely with the Eugene Police Department in that response. Our biggest precedent for the CSL or BTV Cares program, now we're using that name, Pelican Cares program, the closest existing relationship like it is, I would say there's a lot of similarities between what we're trying to create there and the street outreach program. The street outreach program has always been the way in which the street outreach program has coordinated with the city has always been most closely with the police department. So I thought, to the contrary of trying to get that program as far from the police department as possible, from my perspective, we had votes and a lot of public process around, after considering all the alternatives, deciding the police department was the best place for it. I think the police department's record of working on social programs in a collaborative, productive way goes well beyond. It goes back a long time. This goes back to 2015, 2016. I'm very proud of the police department's embrace of harm reduction, both from an enforcement perspective as well as through leadership role with community stat and with the public health approach pushed by the police department on opioids. So I I think for all those reasons, I'm very comfortable. I think there's a long track record of success with this type of work happening out of the police department. Moreover, we have created a lot of these resources. As much as I hear consistent feedback that the CSL program is working very well, I also hear consistent feedback that all these new resources that we have created are not being coordinated as effectively and impactfully as possible. And that's an urgent problem. And so that leads us to this point as well, that having created all these resources, house them at the police department or in some relationship to the police department, I think you really need this position to get the most value out of it. All that said, looking downstream, maybe looking some time downstream, I mean, could future structures evolve? Could there, because from my perspective, this is clearly an area of quick, rapid change and evolution, both in Burlington and nationally. I think there are different ways of organizing these resources that different cities are attempting. And my understanding is there's a growing kind of trend towards and here I'm talking about the crisis response resources, that there are numerous cities that are setting up capacities like this. The majority of them, a growing majority of them, are doing it the way we are proposing to do it here. But that's obviously an area that is sort of new and is evolving, and we'll continue to watch. And I certainly don't. I'm open to further conversation about it. I think every time we make a decision and add resources, in some ways it's an important step in this direction. So I guess I understand, Councilor McGee, if you're fundamentally uncomfortable with it, why you'd be voting against it. But at the same time, I certainly comfortable, President Paul, with the idea that this be something we continue to talk about and look at and watch what's happening around the country and consider whether there might be some change. That said, I'm excited to be taking the step. I think it's really important, and I hope we'll have what happen tonight. Councilor McGee.
Thank you, Mayor. I think there's a fundamental difference between a contract managed by the police department and a new team created within the police department. I think Cahoots is certainly a contract that's managed by the Eugene Police, but they don't operate within the department. I think that is a fundamental difference that exists in that program. And I think that's why it's been as successful as it has been. And so I think that's my overall concern here. And I think that was the intent of the RFP, was to have that contract, yes, managed by the police department, but that team would be separate. And so what we're talking about here is a pretty material difference. And so I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Councilor McGee. To make sure we're all clear and the public's clear, if they're watching this, the decision that is being made tonight is focused on the creation of a new position, which from my perspective is needed regardless of how that program sorts out, which is we're not making final decisions on tonight, and I hope we hope to have some decisions in front of you soon. But I do see that is a separate decision. That I think to make sure that we're all clear on that. President Paul, then Councilor Jang, do you have your hand up first? Councilor Jang, then President Paul, then we'll go Jang, Barlow, then back to you, President Paul. Next round.
Coming very quick 2 questions. And the first one is about the position. It's saying it's assistant director. And was just wondering if we currently have a director at the police department or yes.
No, assistant director in the sense that that's. With the police department, we don't call the director, we call him the chief, but it's the one assistant directors report directly to the department head. That's what's envisioned here. And so so we're not gonna call this person a deputy chief because person is not gonna be a sworn officer, it's gonna be a civilian, but assistant director in the way that Norm Baldwin is an assistant director at DPW, in the way that Samantha Dunn is assistant director at CEDO. So our most senior position step down from the director of the CEDO department role.
And all those positions actually do have a director. So those assistant have actually a director, someone they do respond to directly
This position will respond to the chief.
to the chief. Okay. Now, I wanted to also understand the correlation, the relationship between this position and the cahoots. Like, because
Yes.
I hear it being mentioned about what the relationship.
So this crisis response team is very committed to standing up a Burlington version of cahoots, and we got the RFP for it almost a year ago now, approximately a year ago. We sought and secured state money for the creation of this in the fall, and we are trying to get this started as soon as we can, whether it is an in-house program or through a contracted program. Either way, the vision is that the program is managed by it comes through this department, through this structure within the BPD, and is the responsibility of the assistant director for CAPE to oversee. I do think, we had been up until the last couple of weeks working very hard to try to do this through working with the Howard Center through a nonprofit model, which is like which as Eugene does it with the cahoots model. I don't think what we want to get into is a lengthy discussion of this tonight, because it's sort of a separate issue, but we are, as we had some discussion last week and we're reiterating tonight, we are increasingly seeing the best option for getting that program started soon and managed well and managed consistently with the goals we've had for the program to be being an in-house team, at least a partially an in-house team. There's a plan on the table. There'll be a fire department employee, will be one member of the team, you'd be a medical center employee, another member of the team, but that there would be report through this assistant director structure.
Yeah. So
But that, to be clear, that decision is not being made tonight. That is false.
thank you. Yep. Another element reading this memo, and I feel like when we talk about public safety, alternative ways of public safety, I don't like the name, some people don't like the name. But it seems to be missing the park patrols. Where do they fit into all of this?
Great question. Explicitly in the job description, there is a reference to the park patrols. I believe that the idea is the park patrols are housed in parks. So this person, they won't report to this person, but there's like a dotted line over this position is supposed to better coordinate both city resources as well as external resources that are working in this area. So I see there being quite a bit of communication from this position to parks to make sure that those resources are fully coordinated with the resources within this department, in this division, and with the police resources more broadly.
Oh, no, for the questions.
Okay, Councilor Barlow.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Yeah, I was supportive last week. I'm supportive this week as well. And I do like the title change. It makes sense to me, that organizationally we have this housed with the police department. Only because what we've heard consistently from our street outreach, even from Parks Patrol, when we've heard testimony, is that oftentimes when getting into situations that are, you know, not well understood or unpredictable, that there's need for us, you know, to integrate, to have a sworn officer nearby or available. And, you know, the Howard outreach worker that I was talking with said there's times when they have to stand off and they can't do this. I see this as a way to really be able to be more effective at, you know, addressing these things. We also heard it in PAC from the park rangers. There's not a lot of coordination. So I think this is overdue, that we have a way to better coordinate the resources we have. And this position seems to be well suited to do that. So.
Great. President Paul.
The only thing I just wanted to mention, just because I want to make sure that the public does understand that, in reference to what Councillor McGee said about the Cahoots program, it was always the intention to model it really after a successful project, after the successful Cahoots project, which is, as you say, not housed within a police department. They respond, they collaborate, but they are not one and the same. And had it been for the Howard Center being able to prioritize this and do this work, we wouldn't be having a conversation about anything but that. So I think it really boiled down to a question of, do we want to move forward with this and get this going? Or do we potentially, after about 2 years of planning, now potentially wait another year, maybe longer, until this became enough of an ability for them to actually get this work done with all the many other pressing needs that they have in a very difficult, labor environment, et cetera. So, I don't think anybody was jumping up and down wanting it to end up the way that it has ended up, but we do want it to get going. So there are sometimes trade-offs that have to happen, but I do think that we should still have that conversation. Maybe not tomorrow, but certainly at some point as this department, as this arm of public safety grows, that it should be given full consideration to being its own department, with potentially just a department of, overall Department of Public Safety or whatever we end up calling it. But I'll leave it at that so that we can go.
Okay, I think I'm sensing we are ready for a vote.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
Sorry.
we still have time for city council. Okay.
We have time whenever we get up there.
So here are my thoughts. My thoughts are, we need to be very clear and make the distinction between the position and the Cahoots model. I try to understand the dynamic between them, what are the relationship between the position and that model. It's not very clear to me. It is sounding like this position, whoever holds it, will be managing the Cahoot model for the city under the leadership of the chief. That's what I'm hearing, and I don't know if it's clear. I have expensive amount of time. The reason why I'm thankful that we requested to delay this. Talk to police commissioners, talk to those who brought the police, the Cahoots model to the city. I agree with them in some part, but I do not agree with them in other part. I think this position to be housed in the police department, no problem. But for the Cahoots model, for the city, just move forward in housing it within the police department. I believe it's a problematic. I can vote in support of this tonight, but to me, the Cahoots model, we need to bring now a different process around how we're gonna get there. RFP from that Howard Center responded, we don't know exactly why they did not want to take it. Details, we don't know, right? But I completely do believe that it's not about starting something and changing along the way, no. But I think it is about doing something right, taking the time necessary and doing it exactly right. Who is it? When is it? Who's they going to respond to? How many people are, and to get there, I believe we need like an ad hoc committee or a type of committee, representative from city departments, community members, board of health, in order to look into what the cohort for Burlington should look like. How much money, where it will be housed, how many people need to manage it, etc., etc. I can vote in support of this position tonight, but I'm requesting that we open a new process around how do we implement the idea of the COVID model for the city of Burlington. That's where I am.
Great, thank you, Councilor Jang. I appreciate your separating of the two issues and being willing to move forward with this position tonight. I would, because we're not making a decision about the crisis response team tonight, we haven't shared all the information and all the background on kind of where we are and how we got here, and we will certainly do that. I'm hopeful once that's all laid out for you and you see it that, you know, maybe we don't have to go back to square one because we're a long way down this path and there's urgency, I think, to get it set up. But let's take that conversation up on a separate track, and I'll personally spend time with you on it if you would like that. And we'll come back to that very soon. I think we're ready to vote on this item tonight. And if there's no more board members who want to get in, so well, I guess we have not. I don't believe we've brought a motion yet, right? So someone, are we ready? Is someone ready to make a motion on this item?
We already
I think from last week.
have a motion. I thought we had one. Didn't, oh, maybe not. I'm sorry. I don't believe so.
Don't think we have a motion yet. Thank you, President Paul. Second by Councilor Barlow. So any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. I'm going to record that as a 4-1 vote with 4 ayes and Councilor McGee voting no. And I think that's accurate. And if there's no objection, we've now completed the board's business for the evening, and we are adjourned at 5:37. Thank you, everyone.